again to Constell English. This is your host, Nancy Pascual. In the previous episode, we talked about the various ways of preparing our students for composition writing. We said that brainstorming activities would be very important tools to gather as much input as possible. Brainstorming can be done individually through clustering, mapping, cubing, and looping. It can likewise be done interpersonally. That is, students share whatever information they have on a certain topic with their peers in or outside of the classroom. Before we take up the other stages of the process approach, let me show you once again the flowchart, where you will see the different stages a student writer has to go through before he or she produces his or her own composition. Notice the stages in the flowchart. There are 7 altogether. There could be more depending on the felt need. A class may be asked to write 3, 4, 5 drafts before they can write the final draft. If you look more closely at the diagram, you will notice that the focus is on content and not on grammaticality and mechanics. This way, we are able to encourage our students to write, or at least to develop in them the fondness for writing. Observe the stages of the process when grammar errors are checked. It comes as late as stage 6. We will know more about the process approach to writing when we return. Please stand by. Once again, I would like you to take a second look at the flowchart. If you were to summarize the process, how many major stages are there altogether? You're correct. There are only 3 major stages, and these are preparing to write, drafting, and revising. But in practice, the process is often more like this. You will notice that the arrows go in different directions. This means that the sequence cannot be mixed, and much depends on the nature of the draft. If the preliminary drafts have a lot of revision to be done, they have to be polished and repolished. One thing significant is the fact that the student goes through several steps before he or she is able to produce the finished product. The focus then is on how the student learns as he or she goes through the process. Before we take up the rest of the stages in the process approach to writing, let me show you once again the diagram that shows the recursive nature of the process. Observe the circles. They seemingly overlap, telling us of the repetitive nature of the process. This means that a student who tries to write a composition has to go through a lot of stages repeatedly before he or she can arrive at the finished product. We have finished discussing the many pre-writing techniques we can use in the classroom to enable our students to write down their random thoughts about a certain topic. The next question to ask is this: what do students do with the notes they have written down? They have to get their ideas into order. Let's look at how one student writer did it. Observe the changes created in text 2. What difference did you see between the 2 texts? Obviously, the second text had corrections. What do you think did the writer do to arrive at those corrections? He did the following. First, he looked through his notes. Then he used numbers or arrows to put them in the order he wanted to mention them in writing. In other words, what he did was to order his notes so that he can use them in writing his composition. Let's look at another way of how we can make our students see the importance of their written notes in preparation for writing. Use models. Observe this in the following examples. Model 1. Kitchen crew needed, second shift, high school graduate, with cooking experience, can communicate well, inexperience need not apply. Model 2. Front desk crew needed as soon as possible. College graduate, can communicate very well in English and in Filipino. Knowledge of computer will be useful. What did you notice? Obviously, Model 1 was useful in writing Model 2. What things do we remember when we use models which help students with what to write and how to write them? We should do the following. Number 1, look for models of the kind of writing our students would want to do. Number 2, keep a file of these models so we will have them when we need them. 3, think about the content, the information included, the questions asked, the ideas mentioned. 4, look closely at the language used. Underline or make notes of any useful expressions. 5, look closely at the organization of ideas. After discussing some of the ways of getting students' ideas into order, we are now ready to get their words into paper or for them to do their first draft. During the second stage of the process approach to writing, the student should not worry about grammar, vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, and other mechanics of the language, but a few important questions which students have to consider. 1. Who are they writing to? 2. Why are they writing? 3. What are they writing? 4. Where are they? 5. How much time do they have? 6. How do they feel? Let's take up the questions one at a time. Question number 1 refers to the reader. Question number 2 refers to the purpose. Question number 3 refers to the content, while questions 4, 5, and 6 refer to situation. Generally, student writers and even professional writers draft their papers not only once, but several times. The recurring nature of the writing process is evident at this stage. Before you make your students write, tell them not to worry too much in drafting their papers, especially since their objective is to allow the flow of thought to come easily and fast. Tell them not to expect the first draft to be perfect, and this is not the time for them to worry about grammar. I'd like you to look at this sample first draft done by a student. But before you do that, let's pause for a few reminders. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's look at the first draft. Love at first sight is something good feeling. It is something I feel when I saw someone or anybody I liked for the first time in my life. Why this feeling? Of course, it is because I see him for the first time. If I see him again, maybe no more same feeling. Who knows? Does it look correct? Maybe not. What about the grammar? Are the sentences grammatically correct? Look at the spelling of sight. What about the use of tense? Well, those are to be expected. We do allow these errors at this stage. I am sure this will be very different from the final product which the student produces at a much later stage. How would you correct this if you were the teacher? Perhaps you would correct it this way. Love at first sight makes me feel good. It is something I feel when I see someone I like for the first time. Why is this so? Well, maybe I may not see him anymore. What seemed to be the focus of the correction? Nothing else but on grammar. Notice how the teacher almost changed the text completely. The first thing we have to remember is not to check the first draft at all. Secondly, we have to accept whatever ideas are written down on the topic. The filtering of these ideas can be done at a much later stage in the process. Now let us take up some of the ways by which our students can get started to write. Join me in the classroom and watch these little scenarios.
Class, now that we have come up with a cluster of words on the topic, smoking, the great killer, let me now see if you can write beginning sentences about it too. Are there any questions? Yes, Jeremiah?
Teacher, beginning sentence, what do you mean?
Well, beginning sentences, as the name implies, are the first few sentences in your composition.
How many beginning sentences do you expect us to write?
As many as you want. Class, I shall give you enough time to do your work. But remember, do not worry too much about the beginning. Just write down as many possible beginnings as you can and which you can think of about the topic. And then later on, I shall ask you to choose only one. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, kindly bring out your pen and paper. Start writing. Okay, class, I can see that the majority have already written down a lot of beginning sentences. You may now stop writing, and I think it's about time that we hear a few of your samples. Okay, who'd like to recite? Can I see a show of hands? Yes, Ismael? Can you share with us your beginning sentences?
How many shall I read, teacher?
All of them.
Here are some of my examples. 1. Do you want to make an early exit? 2. Smoking can take you to many places. Himlayang Pilipino, Manila Memorial Park, Loyola, and too many more parks around. 3. One stick of cigarette contains 20% of tar and 30% of nicotine. 4. Smoking can lead to one's death. That's all, teacher.
That was wonderful, Ismael. I'm sure that all of you have equally interesting beginning sentences as well. Well, now, let me ask you to choose one beginning sentence from among the many which you have written down. Then, continue writing. Have more sentences written down on the topic, okay? Don't worry about these sentences. Just write and write. Even if you change your mind later on about certain sentences, after some time, you will be able to be on your way to writing your very first draft, okay? Do not forget to choose one beginning sentence first before writing down other sentences. Are you ready, class?
We are ready, ma'am.
Very good. Now start writing.
What did the teacher ask the class to do? That's right. She made them do the following. First, write a few beginning sentences on the topic. Second, choose one beginning sentence. Third, write as many follow-up sentences as possible. There could be instances when students may not start with writing their beginning sentences. They can start anywhere and later come back and write the beginning sentence as in this example. Observe that the student had written a follow-up sentence before writing the beginning sentence. What is most important then is to tell our students to push themselves to the end of the first draft. The important thing is to get ideas on paper, because if they stop to correct themselves too much, they may interrupt the flow of ideas. Tell students to remember the following when they put their ideas down. 1. If unsure of the spelling of a word, make an attempt and keep going. Leave a space and keep going. 2. If unsure of punctuation, make an attempt and keep going. Put a dash in the trouble spot and keep going. 3. If unsure about the words to use, write 2 or 3 alternatives and keep going. Leave a space and keep going. Write it in your own language and keep going. 4. Clearly mark any problem for attention when revising. 5. If they run out of ideas, look back to the preparation notes. Read aloud whatever has been written so far, or ask someone else to do this as you listen. Begin to rewrite or type whatever has been written. Put their writing away for a time, an hour, a day, a few days. Return to it with a fresh and clear mind. Look at this sample segment of a composition and see the application of what I have been saying. Smoking could be fatal, can kill one early. 1 stick of cigarette contains blank percent of tar and blank percent nicotine and blank percent of blank other elements. If one smokes, 1 pack a day times 7 times 4 times 12 times the number of birthdays the smoker will celebrate. He died on his 55th birthday. Did you feel the candidness in the draft? I am sure you did. You must have felt how the writer let go of his ideas without being careful of neatness, grammar, and vocabulary. What does the writer discover by writing the first draft? We will give the answer to this when we return. Please stand by. Welcome back. Now, let's go back to the question I raised earlier. What does the writer discover by writing the first draft? Well, he or she discovers the following: what the writer knows, what the writer needs to know, if the writer has a subject or needs to find a subject, if the subject needs to be limited or expanded, if the topic works, or if a new topic needs to be explored, if the structure answers the reader's questions when these questions are asked, if there is a voice, and if it is the appropriate voice. What happens after our students have finished with their first draft? Join me in the classroom and let's find out what teacher Nika does to answer this question.
Mark, what do you mean by this?
I want to find out whether the article I read was saying what I had in mind.
Then perhaps what you can do is to replace these two words. They seem to be unclear. And then you can make sentences to the beginning sentence of the second paragraph. What do you say, Mark?
You're correct, Shirley. Let me just write this portion.
Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay.
You're correct, Shirley. Let me just write this portion.
Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work is okay. Hey, Mark. Please look at my paper too and tell me whether my work
Yes, I will. Let me just finish with these changes.
Are they done with their first drafts?
Yes, they have finished with them.
They seem to be enjoying what they're doing.
They surely are. Actually, right now, what they're doing is that they're giving feedback on each other's works.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that we have to encourage them to discuss their drafts with their classmates. This is what we call peer conferencing.
Oh, how can we be sure that the peer knows what things to comment on?
You see, at this point, what is focused on is the content or the substance of the composition. What is important is for the classmate to check on the content or what the composition is saying. He does not check on the grammar, on the punctuation, and not so much on organization either. Each of them is expected to discuss or to share their ideas on what the composition is saying.
Don't you give them any guidelines which they can follow?
Actually, we have already come up with a set of guidelines. We evolved them the last time we met.
What are some of these guidelines?
Here, let me show you the questions they can ask of each other when they are doing peer feedback. Let me read them to you. What parts of the composition did you like best? Which ones did you like the least? What message do you think am I trying to say? Which parts of the composition reveal this? Why do you think I chose to write about this topic? Which ideas seem not to be related? Why do you say so? Are there ideas which you think are irrelevant? Which are these? Are there ideas which you think have to be added? What are these? If you were the writer, how would you make this a better composition?
They are indeed very helpful tips to the students, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Did you see the importance of peer conferencing? More so the set of guidelines students followed when they conferred with each other? This task does not only give them a lot of practice in the target language, but also teaches them how to make speculations and decisions. Let's make a recap of what we have discussed so far. We have said that the first two stages of the process approach to writing are pre-writing and drafting. In pre-writing activities, we allow our students to write down their thoughts on the topic without being conscious of grammaticality, spelling, punctuation, and neatness of words. What is most important is for them to get their ideas into the paper. These ideas may come in the form of words, phrases, clauses, or sentence fragments. Drafting means composing. In drafting, we tell our students to get back to their notes and try to filter information which they have to retain, delete, or expand. They may start scribbling down as many beginning sentences as possible on a single topic. Then you can tell them to choose one beginning sentence and expand it. Again, don't have them worry about grammaticality, punctuation, spelling, neatness, and carefulness of work. The drafting stage could be a recursive process. This means that a student can come up with 2, 3, or even 4 drafts before he or she reaches the final draft. The student will have been loaded with ideas for his or her own topic. We are now ready to take up the next stage of the process approach, revising. What is revising? Revising is the stage where the student checks that he has said what he wanted to say, he has said it in a clear and appropriate way, and in other words, revising is the most important part of the writing process. Revising involves checking that content and purpose are clear and appropriate for the reader in a particular writing situation. Revising is not just a matter of checking spelling, punctuation, and grammar. It involves arranging, changing, adding, and leaving out words. It is a very constructive part of the writing process, and it is important that every student sees it this way. He or she should give revising some time and attention in all his or her writing. Take a look at the changes the student writer made when revising her composition. Smoking is danger to once, changed to once with apostrophe help. Although I myself doesn't to don't smoke. I think I will die soon if I start smoking now. My older brother, changed to tells me that smoking is bad, changed to not good for me. According to my teacher, 10 sticks a day of nicotine and tar will surely clog, changed to congest, my pair of deleted lungs. That is why, after 10 years of smoking, 10 sticks a day, I think, deleted, may die prematurely. But change to others, say it's cooling to smoke. It change to makes one feel cool and good. But I'm afraid to try. Or should I? I don't want to die young. What changes were made by the writer? He did the following. First, he changed the order of the parts to make the content clear. Second, he added parts especially to link ideas. Third, he took out parts which were unnecessary. Fourth, he said the same thing in a different way. Fifth, he substituted one word for another. What changes can a writer make when he or she revises a composition? First, he can change the order of parts to make the content clearer. Second, he can add parts especially to link ideas. Third, he takes out parts which are unnecessary. Fourth, he can say the same thing in a different way. Fifth, he can substitute one word for another. Sixth, he combines 2 or 3 sentences into one by taking out unnecessary words or phrases. 7, he can make very long sentences into 2 or 3 sentences. 8, he can change parts which are inappropriate for the situation, the purpose, or the audience. It could be too friendly, or informal, or too formal. 9, he can correct grammar. 10, he can change the punctuation. 11, he can correct spelling if needed. These are some of the many ways the writer can do when he or she goes through the process of revision. What activities can we give our students so that the revision process can be that effective? You will know the answer to this when we return. Don't switch channels. Welcome back. Yes, what classroom exercises do we offer our students so that they can do revision effectively? Well, let's look at the following classroom scenarios.
Class, before you do your revision, let me first give you a short activity to do. Okay? I have here with me a sample composition on the topic how to stay physically fit. Now, the writer of this composition has forgotten to include several pieces of information. What I would like you to do is to help him incorporate these missing pieces of information which he initially left out. Are there any questions? Yes, Kay Ann?
Could you give us a copy of the composition?
Oh yes, definitely. I shall distribute copies of the composition. However, since I lack copies of the composition, you have to share it with your seatmate or your partner. Okay? I also have here with me copies of the copies of the handout which show the pieces of information which are missing. Okay? I'll now distribute them. Kindly pass. Let one in pass. Okay, now does everyone have a copy? Does everyone have a copy?
Yes,
Laali, kindly read the composition.
How to stay physically fit. I weigh a lot of pounds, 150 at age 18. That's indeed tremendous. I am huge, colossal, and gigantic. I don't really mind looking big. What worries me more is my heart. How long can my heart take my heavy weight? Well, for the past 2 weeks, I have been on a strict diet. I have not been eating much rice. I have lessened my intake of soft drinks. I have started to eat vegetables and lessen my intake of meat. I make sure too that I exercise every morning at least for 30 minutes. Perhaps at the end of this month, I will have lost 5 pounds. That is, if I don't cheat, who knows?
Thank you, Laali. Now, class, what I'd like you to do is to look at the board once more. Here are the several pieces of information which the writer missed out on when he first made his draft. Okay, I'll read them one by one. Sleep 8 hours a day in order to feel rested when you wake up. Do not combine rice with meat. You can eat vegetable with rice instead. Eat a lot of fruit during the day. And lastly, take a nap even for a few minutes at noon before working. Okay? Now, class, I will repeat the instructions. What I would like you to do is to incorporate these items which the writer missed out on when he first made his draft. What you will do is to incorporate them into your composition. Now, you and your partner will have to decide where to put these items in the first draft. Is everything clear, class?
Everything is clear, ma'am.
Very good. We now start. Do them by pairs. Get a partner.
What was the purpose of that exercise? Apparently, the teacher was preparing the class for the revision process. She was actually teaching them how to organize ideas by knowing where to put the left-out items. What other activities can help students revise their drafts effectively? Here is another way. Take a look. Directions. Read the news bulletin below. Improve it by adding the words from the pool. You may use each word more than once. Mr. Lantin Reyes, owner and proprietor of Lantin Agency, died of a vehicular accident when his car, a head-on collision with a dump truck. The accident happened when truck driver his way. This made Mr. Reyes swerve right the island. The driver escaped unhurt, while Mr. Reyes died the spot. Rule of words. On, cut, the, car, onto, had, dump, to. Of course, this activity is quite manipulative because all the student has to do is to incorporate the words in the text. Nevertheless, the exercise does enable the student to see interrelationships between and among ideas. Other ways of making our students do revision effectively are given in the TSM, or the Teaching Support Material. Please refer to them. Here are some ideas we can tell our students to do for more effective revising. Read the compositions out loud to themselves or have someone else read their writing to them. Ask someone else to read through their writing and to discuss it with them. Some of the questions that could be asked are the following. Which parts are unclear? Why? How can they be made clearer? Are any words used wrongly or inappropriately? What other words could be used? Which parts are interesting? Why? Is the order of ideas clear or confusing? Are any parts unnecessary? If they are working alone, tell them to put themselves in the place of the reader and ask themselves the same sorts of questions. Tell them to divide the revising task. They should only look for one or two things at a time. They should clearly mark all the parts that need revision as they read, because they may not be able to change everything immediately. So they need to know where to return to. Lastly, they should become aware of their own particular problem areas. They should be on the lookout when they revise. Please refer to the TSM for other guidelines on revision. Do you think revision is always necessary? The answer is no. The first draft may be so well planned and organized that it works the first time. For drafts that have been revised the second, third, fourth time, feedback is necessary. How do you respond to student writing? What correction technique will you use? To ease the burden of correcting papers and to extend readership, peer correction should be encouraged. How can this be done? Welcome back. Peer correction can be done in a number of ways. First, by projection. A student composition can be projected onto the screen with the use of an opaque projector for the entire class to correct. The second way is by group composition. This is a composition useful to us English teachers who handle big-sized classes and cannot grade written work frequently. Third, by exchanging compositions. A composition can be given to a pair of students to be rewritten. The teacher can help by looking for specific types of errors. Fourth, by in-class editing. This involves self and peer correction. Students rewrite them in class under the guidance of their classmates and the teacher. The class discusses students' work, correcting any grammatical errors, errors in mechanics, and others. We now come to the last stage of the process approach to writing, publishing and presenting. In the final stage, your students will share their final produce. Not all of the writing your students do, however, can be shared. You may ask them to continue revising their work even after they have shared it. Although they often will be writing for their teachers and peers, there are many more opportunities for them to share their work with a wider audience in a variety of formats. Here are some of them. The compositions can be shared in a pen pal corner, in a school paper, in writing exchange groups, in video or multimedia presentations, or in writing portfolios. Publication completes the act of writing. Students' works have to be published. In sum, we can say that the writing process is an active one, the teacher and the student working together to develop the student's writing skills. What did we learn in today's episode? We learned the many ways of making your students go through the last 3 stages of the process approach to writing: drafting, revising, publishing, and presenting. Remember, the focus of the process approach is on the process and not on the product. Why don't you try it? And I am sure you can make your students write their thoughts with fondness. In the next episode, we shall talk about unity, coherence, and cohesion in writing. Once again, this is your host, Nancy Pascual, saying goodbye and happy teaching.